CPI data, ETH merger inbound, markets are rallying. Welcome back, everybody, to New Front Radio, episode 5. I'm your host, Internet Joey, alongside Jaime, where we cover market updates, market news, and economic topics designed to give you some insights, some alpha on what's kind of going on, and our thoughts and perspectives. As usual, none of this is financial advice, entertainment purposes only. Let's go ahead and dive into today's episode. Jaime, markets are rallying off that CPI data, 8.5, which is pretty weird. Sometimes we're living in right now. Kind of take us what you're thinking about and kind of your forecast for the current market situation.
So, yeah, that was pretty weird. So we got 8.5% CPI inflation. The good news is that it came in lower than what we were expecting. So I think they had expected 8.7. We got 8.5. This is the first month where we actually got decreased inflation through the CPI. We can talk about if that number is manipulated or not. But we do have less inflation. So that's good. The markets really like that. We saw move up in equities. Crypto finally started to go up. ETH, I think it's at 1,900 as of today. Yeah, 1,900. So that's pretty bullish for the markets in general. I'm pretty happy where things are going. We don't have another Fed rate hike till September. So I kind of like where we're at right now. I think this is healthy. I think we're going to see markets move in the short term up. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I actually agree. So if you watch kind of our previous episodes, we were bullish. Kind of, I remember you asked at the end of the episode kind of where our sentiment was. I think we both agreed on being bullish. We just had to see what the VIX would do. Going back at the charts, so I was charting during that episode. The VIX actually broke down, and Bitcoin actually closed above the 200-day moving. The 200-week moving average, which was bullish. And now we're actually seeing kind of the tail end of this and the kind of the results coming in now. So we were kind of right on our predictions there, which I thought was interesting. Well, according to Biden, I thought I put this out, inflation's at 0%.
Yeah, so I heard that.
The markets rallied because of that.
Yeah, apparently they don't know how to do math in the White House because Biden and Kamala Harris, they both said, oh, inflation's at 0%. I think what they meant to say was that there was no increased inflation, but they just don't know how to say that, or they're purposely trying to say something different so the public that doesn't understand any of these numbers, so they can think everything's nice and dandy. But,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we did get decreased inflation.
Right. And, markets are – so I was just thinking why markets tend to rally off CPI data is because as long as it misses the expectation – it's good news. And now this is missing expectation by, a couple of basis points, but it's still at 8.5, which is pretty high. So it's not really the number. It's really the projection that matters more and kind of, the uncertainty that is what markets don't like. So once you have certainty, markets tend to rally off that because, now they know and now they're pricing in. So, it's somewhat of good news, whether it's short term, but,
markets could also be feeling like, okay, well, it feels like maybe the Fed now has this under control. Whereas a couple months ago, everybody thought the sky was falling. Everybody thought nobody has control. The White House, IMF, the Fed, nobody knows what's going to happen. Whereas now, after the rate hikes, after the quantitative tightening, market sentiment feels like they have some control over the markets. And as long as there's certainty in what the future is going to look like, well, markets are going to rally because they prefer predictability over, not knowing what's going to happen.
That's absolutely true because, it's forward looking. So yeah, that's exactly what's going on. So that was pretty cool. I know I took some positions over, this morning and over the week so far. Let's talk about that ETH merger. They just had that upgrade. So that's pretty good news. It's been a long time coming.
So I'll be honest, I don't know a whole ton about ETH. I've used some ETH stuff in the past. I have some ETH. I'm not a huge fan, if I'm completely honest, but I do like to study what they're doing. I believe what just happened is they approved the merger for their testnet, if I'm not mistaken, and I think they put an actual date on when the merger is going to happen. I believe it's somewhere mid-September. I wouldn't put a ton of weight on that because, as we've seen, the ETH 2.0 has been delayed like 20 times now in the last 2 years. So I wouldn't put a whole much of weight on what the devs say. But that is pretty bullish for the entire market. ETH on proof of work is not sustainable. It's not sustainable at all. And then moving to proof of stake is a really good step in the right direction. So let's see what happened. That might push markets further. I mean, ETH is pumping. I think it's out of my list of tokens, it's the one that's up the highest in the week. So that might definitely be bullish in the next couple months if they're successful with this merger.
Yeah, so I'm trying to bring it up here. I think it was an upgrade. It was a successful upgrade to the new protocol. I'm trying to see what the name of it was.
I think it's called like Golgi something. I don't remember what it's called.
Yeah. Well, anyways, it was successful. So now that's literally what they needed to go into proof of work. So, right now they are.
You mean proof of stake?
Sorry, proof of stake. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that upgrade is the main thing to move to proof of stake.
Yeah. So what I had read earlier today was that their testnet had successfully done the swap to proof of stake, and everything was looking good for now. And the other thing was that I have it right here. It says the Ethereum merge has been scheduled for approximately somewhere around September 15th to 16th. So that's the bullish news everybody has on Ethereum right now. So that's good for them, man. I'm excited. They've been promising this for a long time. However, I will say that this does not change a lot of things that people think is going to change. So the burn rate is going to stay the same. The gas fees are going to stay the same. The Ethereum 2.0 is going to take a long time for it to completely have the vision that Vitalik has. I think Vitalik said only about 60% of his ETH idea has come to fruition at this point. So it might be another 2 or 3 years before we see ETH 2.0 the way people expect it. So it's definitely a step in the right direction. I'm excited for them, but there's still a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, and even long after 2.0 is actually on mainnet and it's actually running, it's still going to take some while for the next upgrades to actually implement the lower gas fees. So, it is going to take some time. I know most people thought upgrade EIP 1559 was going to decrease and slash the gas fees, but it did a minimum effect. So yeah, it's going to take some time, but all in all, this is good for the project. It's been a long time coming. And, ETH, in order for ETH to scale, a proof of stake is the best call. Yep. It's basically damn if they do, damn if they don't. So, for the whole team back there kind of holding it down, there's a lot of weight on their shoulders. So, patience is probably the best, so they make sure everything goes smooth.
Yeah, and I was looking a little bit at how their protocol is going to work. So I believe for you to have a node, you have to have 36 ETH locked up to have
32.
Or 32. Okay. 32 ETH locked up, which I think at this point is well over $100,000, or close to $100,000. So that's definitely going to be tough. So I know what some exchanges are doing. They're doing liquidity. Yeah, they're pooling liquidity for you guys to do staking. So that's going to be pretty cool. We'll see what happens there. I wonder what's going to happen with all the ETH miners.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's a great question. So about the basically it's something bomb. I forget the name, but it's a bomb, right? And basically what it is, it's a piece of code that goes into the protocol that it increases the difficulty so much that proof of work basically is rendered useless. It can't happen anymore.
Gotcha.
On the chain, that's what it's called, the difficulty bomb.
Gotcha.
Once they release a difficulty bomb, proof of work, all the miners, they're going to be incentivized to go into proof of stake because mining is so not profitable and so difficult, it's practically impossible. Yeah. So that's kind of how they get that done.
Yeah, I was scouring through Twitter and I saw some of them like saying they're going to do an ETH fork, a mining ETH fork to keep it alive. I mean, You might as well just switch to Ethereum Classic. I mean, it's a dead project already. If you wanna mine on Ethereum, go over there. But I think it's gonna be rendered useless.
Yeah, and I mean, I think Ethereum needs this scale, the scaling ability, the capacity, because it's not going to be like Bitcoin. Nothing's going to be like Bitcoin. It needs to compete with Cardano. Well, barely Cardano, but it needs to compete with Solana. All these other layer ones coming out. In all reality, ETH. The only reason it's proof of work is because there was only the proof of work model when ETH was invented. So, this is only a matter of time. And I think, ultimately it's super bullish for Ethereum. In my opinion, it's so bullish that I'm not really even planning to unlock kind of some of the stake ETH I have when it comes to that, because in fact, I'll probably stake even more. I really don't want to believe buy the rumor, sell the news on this one. Obviously, you can de-risk position. You can, depending on where you're standing and what you're thinking. But ultimately, I think this is going to be good, and price will probably appreciate after. But we just have to see.
Yeah, I look, as much as I don't like Ethereum, and I really don't like Ethereum, I have to admit that they're not going anywhere. I mean, look, they're partnered with JP Morgan. We know they're doing some big things. They're partnered with some other huge corporations around the world. And it's almost like this proof of stake merge or change is supposed to happen for them to be able to provide services to the world, to provide DeFi to the world for different applications. Because we know it's coming. In the next 10, 20 years, a ton of new things are coming into DeFi. A ton of huge institutions are moving into DeFi, and they need the proper things in place. Because proof of work wasn't it. Proof of work was not going to do that. So I think this is pretty cool for ETH.
And they have, Ethereum has first mover advantage. So from a competitive standpoint, they're the ones that everyone's gravitating to, being the second largest coin right now, or project
by
in
market
general.
cap.
So there's they have a lot of backing, obviously VC backing, but even institutional backing. So yeah, I mean, it's hard to really prey on the downfall of Ethereum. You might as well be on the winning side, obviously managing risk. But yeah, it's hard to, it's hard to be bearish on something that is so anticipated. Obviously, expectations can be kind of inflated. Things can go wrong, but look, you might as well be on the winning side, and you just do the math yourself and you figure that out. But so I know I'm pretty excited for that. I definitely plan to, look forward to the team kind of rolling out more of these upgrades, more of these headlines. But right now, basically Ethereum 2.0 is set to roll out September 15th through the 16th. So mark that day on your calendars. We'll see how that happens.
We'll see if it happens, because we know they like to push their dates. But yeah, man. And that kind of brings me into the next topic that I wanted to talk about. We're seeing every day that the world's moving digitally. And we just just reported that England, over the next month or two, they're going to be eliminating their 20s and 50 banknotes. So completely, their fiat banknotes are going to be removed out of circulation. You will not be able to use them or redeem them in anywhere. So we're seeing huge countries like England, right? This is not like a third world country. Huge countries like England making a shift to digital. Getting rid of fiat currency, getting rid of the dirty paper money, as they like to say. And ultimately, whether this is good or bad, nobody really knows. Are we going to go into a CBDC dystopian world? We don't really know. We'll see. But we do know the trend is digital. So if the trend is digital and you don't have any investments in crypto right now, I'd really highly consider looking into that market and at least getting a bit of something in the top 10, something in the top 20 that you think has, a staying power. You should definitely consider getting into that, because that's the way the world's moving.
I mean, the writing is kind of on the wall, going back to what you're saying. You just see kind of these movements happening, and, we have these cultural, economical, I don't know if that's a word, economical, economic.
I'll take it, economical.
And, just overall technology movements that basically change and shift the path of humanity. And, internet has been one tremendously, obviously. And now going back to cryptocurrency, it seems to be, the next one. So at least I think what's good to take into consideration is not the risk of adding, let's say 1%, 5%, 10% to a portfolio. Look at the risk or the opportunity cost of not adding a 5%, 10% allocation into this industry. That's the risk, not adding it, but not adding it. And I really feel like when you look at it from kind of this other perspective, the other way around, then you start asking yourself, wow, because the last thing you want to do is be like, oh, you missed out on this revolution, right? Not saying that it's a good thing, it's a bad thing. I'm just saying this is a trend that's happening. It's a technology, it's an emerging technology. You might as well try to hedge some of the more legacy investments, maybe the more conservative plays, with maybe a little bit more high beta play like cryptocurrency. And I think you're bringing up a great point. How it's crazy how we're seeing an entire country, first world country, removing their cash. I mean, this was a conspiracy, right? It
was,
50, 100, even, maybe 5 years ago. And now it's literally happening. It's just crazy to see in real time. And we're living through this change.
And I like the word you used. You said revolution. So I heard this. I don't know who coined the term, but I heard it on a couple podcasts. And we are currently living through the beginning of the fourth industrial revolution. Okay?
Exactly.
The fourth industrial revolution is happening right now, and it's through digital assets. It's through blockchain. It's through technology. And if you do not adapt, you're going to be left behind. It's kind of like when the car was invented. When the car was invented, if you stayed on your horse, you say, hey, I don't got to pour gas on my horse. My horse is out there and ready to go whenever I want. Well, you got left behind after 10 years.
Well, what's funny? I love how you use that analogy, because everyone says, well, how are banks going to use Bitcoin? And this is Bitcoin specific, but, how are banks going to use Bitcoin? How are countries going to use Bitcoin? Or more specifically, how are banks going to use Bitcoin or these technologies? Disregarding CBDCs, Bitcoin itself, it's not for banks to use Bitcoin. Bitcoin completely removes the need for banks and local banks, government banks, federal banks. That's Bitcoin specific, which is funny because that's going back to the car analogy. Back then they said, well, how are these, I forget the name of the people that rode what was the name of the people with the horses, and they would, whatever, not a trolley, but the carriages or whatever, right?
Yeah.
They would say, well, how are these carriage companies going to use cars? Well, that's the thing. The carriage companies don't use cars. The cars completely remove the need for carriages and horses and stuff like that. And that's kind of the idea of this whole Bitcoin revolution, the sovereign individual. That's Bitcoin specific. And it's really one of these technologies that is really going to eliminate an entire industry. Obviously, banks are very powerful, so they're going to be, coming back with their own CBDC, their own, blockchain. It's probably not really an open blockchain. It's probably more of a private one, but, that they're going to start implementing these technologies. So I just thought that was a great example how you use the horse and the car.
Yeah, and it's definitely, it's going to happen, and it's happening. And if you don't adjust, you're going to be left behind. You really are. I mean, I think back to there's a cartoon. It was like a newspaper cartoon that was done back in I don't know if it was the 1800s or the 1900s, but it was when telephones started to become popular. And the cartoon had drawn a whole mess of wires, like telephone wires, and people getting caught up in the wires because they didn't like the wires. That was new to them. People are scared of what they don't understand. So the cartoon was basically criticizing telephone wires and how it's going to be the end of society with these wires everywhere. And look what happened. Now we need the wires to communicate, to have this exact podcast. We need those wires. And
right.
Those people who chose not to adopt it were just left in the dust.
I mean, it's like you said, it's people are scared of what they don't know, scared of change. And it's so funny because I know exactly that, I don't know what you call a political cartoon you're talking about. Yeah. It's so funny. I mean, even look at more recently internet, right? If you look in the 90s, all these, daytime shows, what's internet? I know that video's gone viral. It's like, what's internet? Hey, can you explain what's internet? What's email?
The
They
Bill
have no
Gates
idea
interview.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They have no idea.
Yeah.
It's like, why do I need to listen to the ball game on a computer? I can just listen to the radio. And then, everyone starts laughing. It's just, when you see changes, I think maybe for our demographic, our generation, we maybe have a maybe more keen to identifying trends, maybe because of the internet in general. We're quicker when it comes to information compared to our older generations. But as soon as you kind of pick onto a trend, it's not hard to see maybe the potential it has into, growing to something new. Whereas you go back in time, going back to your cable and the electricity wires, look at how slow information traveled back then. Of course, people were skeptical. It's not like they can go Google what they didn't know. They had to, it's like, wait for somebody else they see doing it and stuff like that. Nowadays, just Google it. You have Twitter. Things before they even happen nowadays.
So that last revolution was the revolution of information. So we were able to get information extremely cheaply and extremely fast at a moment's notice. I can send you an email and I can talk to you and tell you the information. I can send you an article and it was all free, right? Now we're going into the internet of value. If you haven't heard that term before, it's going to be used a lot in the next 20 years. We're going to the internet of value, where now value can be transferred through the internet very quickly. As easy as sending an email, I can send you money, I can send you a product, I can send you an investment. As that easy as an email. And we're slowly getting to that point, and people don't fully grasp how big that is, because there's trillions of dollars in world markets. And if we can facilitate that, of how to transfer assets from one place to another in seconds, well, that just changes the entire economic landscape for so many people. I mean, maybe if you live in a first world country, it's not that big of a deal because you don't see it. But people in third world countries, it completely changes their scope, their range of things they can do. Now, a poor farmer in Guyana can access somebody in America and be able to do trade with them in different currencies. That's enormous. You're really interconnecting the world at large.
Would you say that when you say internet of value, it's because we're now utilizing and understanding how to basically have digital ownership of assets or information or data?
Yeah, and I think it took a special generation to propel that. And I think it was our generation because, as funny as it sounds, I think, and this is just my crazy theory, I think video games had a big thing to do with it, because
interesting.
A lot of people our age grew up playing video games where you had your currency or your tokens or your little gold tokens in your game, and that concept of having digital money wasn't that foreign than it was to our parents. So as we grew up, that was normal to us. Okay, we have digital. And then I played, I don't know if you ever played RuneScape, but you could trade in RuneScape. If I picked up a staff or a sword, I can trade it with another friend. That concept of digital trading was already instilled to us as children. And as we grew up, it didn't seem foreign when, hey, this crypto thing that has real value can be exchanged. So I think it took a special generation to propel that forward. And that's why it threw a lot of old timers off, because they're like, what's digital? That makes sense. That's not even real. When Bitcoin first came out, I know a lot of people say, oh, like there's nothing, it's not real. You can't touch it.
Yeah.
I can't hold it, right? But to us, that wasn't so foreign, because I when I logged onto my Xbox from my PlayStation, I knew all my stuff was there. All my data had saved from my last game. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I mean, bro, I honestly, I haven't heard of someone have that idea. I mean, that was honestly brilliant. It makes so much sense. That's kind of the bridge between digital to what something we were already accustomed to, kind of breaking it into actually now it's a real life utility. I think that was actually genius. And it's funny because going back to Bitcoin's not real, I can't hold it. Every time someone says this to me, I say, well, show me how you hold an email, right? Show me how you hold a website.
Yep.
How do you hold a website? Right, and then they'll show you on their phone, and okay, well, you can pull up the blockchain right on your phone too. You can pull up your wallet right on your phone too. It's the same thing. Just people, I think the disconnect is between money, cash, and it actually meaning something, right? And it's funny because if you think about it, most cash is digital already. It's already in a bank account app, right? The only thing bridging that is that you probably went to the bank and deposited that money, or even less so, your direct deposit went right into your bank account. But even then, you never really held the cash. You never really,
Correct.
touched it. So I just think it's more of a mental thing than it is there's actually being logic behind, like, what do you mean digital currency?
Yeah, correct. Exactly. And I'm curious, what do you think? So when we grew up, this wasn't a thing. We were the frontiers in this digital age, and we're starting this fourth industrial revolution. But what do you think it's going to be like for the younger generation now? I don't know if you'll call them, what's the one after millennial?
Gen Z? Yeah.
So what do you think it's going to be like for them, where they're basically being born into already understanding blockchain and digital assets and crypto and NFTs and the metaverse? I mean, I know the metaverse is very early and there's still a lot of problems. We're 5-10 years away from a real good metaverse. But how do you think it's going to affect them compared to us?
That's a great question. Well, number one, I'll argue by saying we're already in the metaverse. Okay. I think people have some misunderstanding that the metaverse is some virtual world we're going to enter with VR. And yes, sure, that is a component, but really the metaverse is just another word for internet communication. So this podcast is the metaverse, right? It's happening in the internet. Games are metaverse, right? Twitter is a metaverse. It's just another word for internet communication. When it comes to Gen Z and kind of maybe even the generations that precede it, my belief is that they're going to probably look back and be like, why would I hold cash? Why do I need a physical wallet? The main reason, other than just being born into this and kind of everything just progressing into this, the main reason will be that it's just more efficient to go digital. I mean, take pictures, for example. I can take a photo, right, and I can print it out, and then I can give you the photo, and then what are you going to do? Put it in your pocket? Obviously, you can hang it up and stuff like that. But how easy it is for me just to send you a text of the photo. I mean, it's so much quicker, and I feel like that's going to be the same logic when it comes to sending money, right? It's like, well, why would I give you cash and meet you in person to give you, money? I can just send it to you. It's a lot quicker. It's a lot cheaper, and I don't have to think about it. So to answer your question, I just think it's going to be the reason will be efficiency. It's a lot more efficient to go digital than it is the physical work, and it's a lot quicker.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what'll probably happen is our generation will set the foundation for what it's going to look like, whether that's the metaverse, and metaverse can mean, like you said, it can mean a lot of things. It can mean this podcast, it can mean an actual video game, but we're going to set the foundation of how that's going to work, how economics, how the internet's value is going to work. And then the next generations could really going to beautify it, if that's the word. They're really going to add creativity to it.
Yeah. I think, so one of the, what I really look forward to, cause I kind of have OCD in general, but I have OCD when it comes to like technical stuff. So like I'm really organized. I have all my stuff. But what I really like about Web3, for example, I know it's a buzzword, but I like the idea of an address. And as long as really that address is kind of on a pseudo-anonymous blockchain, or if there's a way or a mechanism for the address to only take the information that I give it and nothing more, number one, we're adding a layer of privacy and security. And number two, we're making things more not centralized, but just more convenient for the user. So rather than having, a username and password for every single one of these websites, I just log in with my wallet address. And now, that platform or that application, it can't really suck any more data. It can only take the data I allow it to. For example, my wallet, that it recognizes me, and that's it. And I really look forward to that. I really think that's, like I was saying before, that's a step into efficiency. And really, if you kind of look at what we have social security numbers, right? And social security, I mean, you can Google this. It is such a archaic piece of technology. I mean, it's a number, it's a piece of paper. If you lose it, if someone takes it, your whole identity is gone. I mean, we don't need this type of vulnerability anymore in the 21st century. We just need something a little bit more robust, more digital, more efficient. And I feel like there can be some sort of digital wallet address that can replace the social security number. Now, with that being said, the only caveat is we need to make sure that data is actually protected and it can't be compromised. If taking a social security number or robbing a social security number is easier, or let me rephrase it. If stealing your digital wallet social security number is easier than the physical piece of paper, people aren't going to use it. So we just need to overcome that security barrier, and then everything else is history.
Nice. That's pretty interesting. I never thought about it that way. I mean, I guess I would assume we'd probably move into a more digital way of tracking people in general. And but when I say we, I'm pretty much talking about governments. They're going to find a way to track us no matter what. And if they can find a digital way to track where we spend our money, our social security, where we've been. I mean, they're already doing it. They might as well do it digitally through some type of address. But it'd be cool if there was safety barriers in place, kind of like you mentioned, through different chains that can just allow them to take what they need and not everything else.
Right, right. And that's the thing that, talk like this can sound very dystopian, maybe to the super, super libertarian, but I mean, nothing wrong with libertarians. I'm one myself, but it has nothing to do with it. Really, at the end of the day, everything is a double-edged sword, especially pieces of technology with so much power. So these things can allow for great growth, great efficiency, and actually really push humanity forward. The only caveat is we have to make sure we do it properly. And if we do that and we just do it properly, humanity can continue to not only survive but strive heading into the future. And I actually have one more thing to say. A buddy of mine, he actually I never heard this before, never seen it before. He brought a great idea, and I don't really know where he heard it from, but biometrics as usernames, and then basically, let's say your address or your password. Really, passwords are kind of an outdated piece of technology too. So going back to your wallet or your private key as the password. And I think that would be kind of cool because, username is basically to the public. So if you can just encrypt the username being a biometric, well, you don't really need a name. You just have bio information saying, hey, it's me, physical me, logging into the computer. And then the password being either some sort of 2FA. So your public address, your public wallet you're logging in with, and let's say, your two-factor authenticator. And I feel like that's really a way to really bridge digital security by kind of intertwining it with biometrics and 2FA. And that is something I would like to see maybe be spoken more about and just worked on.
I definitely think something like that's going to happen. I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with the Tezos wallet. I think they do fingerprints, right? Do they do fingerprints? No?
I don't have a Tezo wallet, but the wallets I have some Tezos on I'm not familiar with it.
Gotcha. I could have sworn I saw a cold storage wallet that has fingerprint scanning. I might be wrong about that, but I definitely think kind of marrying biometrics along with, two-step authentication, that's definitely the way to go. We're probably going to see something like that moving forward as digital assets become more popular.
Yeah, and the key is to have not to have biometric as the password. You don't want the biometric as the password because anyone can take my fingerprint and then log in. Anyone can pretend to be right. You just want it as the username. That's layer one. And then layer two would be more of the password, which is maybe a 2FA. And the reason it won't be an actual password is because passwords are stored locally on that company's database. So it's about removing all of that information and just making it a little bit more sovereign for the individual. And I'm looking forward to kind of how we're going to see Web3 develop in the sense of wallets and users and stuff like that. That's really what I look forward to personally when it comes to the tech.
Yeah, and for those of you who are listening and kind of get scared or they get a little skittish about all this information, having to hold your own cryptos and having to have a cold wallet, guys, it's not that big of a deal. I mean, look, if you have a small amount of crypto, I mean, it's not that big of a deal. Honestly, I would just tell you to keep it on the exchange if it's not that valuable to you. And if it is, just look up a YouTube video. It's not that hard. All you have to have is a password and know your security phrase. I'm pretty sure it's going to get more intricate as time goes on, but if you can keep your value off of exchanges or off of centralized places, it's always better to have it in your control. And there's certain precautions you can take to make sure there's, your risk of losing is minimized. But if you really weigh your options on whether having your value, whether that's crypto or anything else or any assets on a centralized platform compared to you hosting it, it's a world of a difference. So yeah, I definitely recommend, anybody who has any type of crypto that has a significant amount of value for you, try to get a cold storage wallet and put it on there.
It's funny. If you want to get, that's a great point. If you want to get even more technical and kind of more, I'll just say tinfoil, you can Google, well, what's the safest email, basically email platform or email server or email hoster. The number one way to have secure email is actually to have it on your own servers. So, and that's just email. So can you imagine assets being held off somewhere on some server you don't even know about? You would definitely want that in your possession. And,
for sure.
Email is a form of communication. And, even those are going to tell you, well, the number one way to keep it safe and keep your stuff private is on your own servers. So I really looking forward to maybe more of a decentralized way of just internet, I don't know what you call it, just internet use, just more decentralized, more ownership, and something like blockchain really allows that to happen. So I thought you brought up a great point.
Awesome, man.
And also,
let's talk a little bit. Oh, go ahead.
Really quick, just for our listeners, I know a lot of this can sound overwhelming, but at the end of the day, it's good just to have like a growth mentality and not be so worried or overwhelmed on kind of like, well, I don't know anything you're talking about. It sounds like a lot. Like I can never learn that. Like there's no reason to think like that because it's not, it's not rocket science. And really it's just, if you're looking to like improve and you just want to you don't even necessarily just need to get ahead of other people. You just want to continue evolving as a person and yourself. All of this stuff is just a Google search away or, just, looking for this information, you will find it. And it's not to be overwhelmed because, change is growth. So you don't have to feel, if you're trying to not change and you want everything to be the way it is and you don't want to, get evolved and stuff like that, you're limiting yourself. You're prohibiting yourself from really becoming that greater person. And that's just really at a subconscious level. But, this is nothing to be overwhelmed about. And, change is growth. So you should just embrace it and have a growth mentality rather than a more of a pessimistic. What's the other one? If you have a growth mentality or a
optimistic. Either you're growing or dying.
Well, you have a growth mentality or you have I forget the other one, but you have a stagnant mentality and you don't want to be that one. So I just wanted to add that in there because it could sound all this stuff sounds like a lot,
Yeah, it is a lot in the beginning when you don't know anything, but you just take it one step at a time. I mean, I didn't learn how to do all this in one day. It took me years of just researching, and when I find something new, I'll spend a week looking into it, and then I'll figure out 2 or 3 things, and then I'll ask a friend. It's just learning. Life is learning. If you're interested in something,
that's a bar.
Just right. Life is learning.
Life is learning. Yeah, absolutely. We're learning every day,
and if you're not learning, you're dying.
Exactly. And that's a great point.
Awesome,
I think that can that can transition us into kind of the next topics I wanted to talk about, which was more of a personal finance and kind of just my 2 cents. Not that I'm an advisor. Nothing I say is actually advice, but just my 2 cents and some of the things that's been kind of on my mind. Jaime, is that okay? Can we transition into that, or you had any other input?
Yeah, let's go ahead and let's talk about personal finance. I'll all in on Doge.
Yeah, right. So I'll ask you, when you think of personal finance, kind of what are the things that come to mind, and kind of what are your ideas of it?
Well, for me, it's being responsible with the income you are receiving, and then what are you doing with your excess, the excess that you're not spending, if you're even having excess, because some people just spend their whole paycheck. For me, I had a very saver mentality a couple years ago. I would just save. I mean, I had a goal of kind of buying a house, and that kind of dissolved when I found digital assets, and then I just turned into invest. And I was portioning a large portion of my paychecks to directly going to digital assets. If you had a small business, I had a couple of small businesses that I tried to start up. I throw money into that. I was always looking to expand not just my wealth, because money's not everything, but expand my knowledge on other things and expand my reach. And that's what I think when you say personal finance, it's using your money for things that are, that ultimately going to benefit you and your family in the future.
That was actually a great example. That was pretty on the nail. I think that was pretty good. I want to come back to that in a second. Specifically exactly what your story was. First, so when I think of personal finance, the first thing is personal. So it's very specific for the individual. A lot of people say, personal finance, but take into consideration the first word, which is personal. The second word is finance. And here I would say fundamentally, the ideas, the strategies, they don't change fundamentally. Now, the investment vehicles, the saving vehicles, the retirement vehicles, these things can be used as tools, and that's where it can get personalized. But fundamentally, everything is the same, which is ultimately having assurance at the end and having a way of basically becoming self or financially independent. The sooner the better. So at the end of the day, saving, taking a portion of saving, right? It's not going to change for everybody. Just because you make, $37,000 a year or you make $2 million a year, regardless, you should be living below the means. That way your savings portion can be properly ratioed for the income you're making and kind of your lifestyle. So my 2 cents is like, I'm always going to be preaching that the fundamentals don't change, because I've seen in my own lifetime with my peers and just maybe living where I live, you maybe see it a little bit more, but you kind of see as soon as people start making more, they start spending more. So I like kind of what Hormozy says, and he says that wealth isn't a number, it's a ratio. And I guess ratio is a number, but it's kind of, it's a brilliant way of looking at it, because it's not, wealth isn't 100,000, right? 1 million, 2 million, 100 million. It's not really that. It depends. It's the ratio of your debt to income ratio. So you could be making $1 million a year and spending 999,000. I mean, and what? You're still wealthy? No, because you're not preserving and you're spending just as much as you're making. And going back to what I was saying is, like, I see that a lot. I see, especially being, the age we are, we tend to be a little bit more risk on, a little bit more living in the moment. I'll make some and I'll spend some, and then, I'll make it back later. The problem with that is that, sure, I like the ambition. I like when people say, I can make it back later. I love that. The problem is the time. There's time decay when it comes to this idea, because sure, you spend it now and you make it back later, but the opportunity cost is no compounding, because you could have saved some of that income and actually have it working in the back end, compounding on itself, rather than spending it and being like, well, I'll just make it back later, I have time. Yes, that's true, but you always want to be compounding, and you don't want to be wasting time on just the idea of, I'll make it back later. Does that make sense, Jaime, or do you have any?
Yeah. 100%. The only thing I would add to that is wealth could also be interpreted in many different forms. So if for you, and again, this is why it's called personal finance. If for you, you're a lot happier going backpacking around Europe and just making $20,000 a year on some online program that you're doing, but you're happy, that's wealth to you. You know, for somebody else, wealth is being on a skyrise in Brickell and working 12 hours a day. So you have to really know yourself and know what wealth means to you. And again, it's personal finance, and you have to find out what your end goal is, and then kind of backtrack on that, reverse engineer what your goal is, and then adjust your personal finances to meet that goal.
Right.
Because if you're unhappy and your small term goals are not going to reach your long term goals, then your personal finance is upside down because you're not going anywhere.
Right. Well, there's one thing I would argue, and kind of the wording you're using. I wouldn't use the word happy, because happy is really just a state. And kind of a better word would be fulfillment. But when it comes to personal finance and kind of financial independence, I don't believe it's really happiness. It really comes down to sustainability. So, I can be backpacking Europe, and I'm happy, but I can't sustain this. How am I going to eat tomorrow? Right? So as long as you can sustain that, which then in turn will make you happy, that's true wealth, because now you're having the income sustain kind of your lifestyle. So it's really a matter of sustainability than it is, what makes me happy. Obviously, the idea is that sustainability will equal fulfillment and happiness. But everything is like you said, about, it's personal. So kind of, I want to go back to your story really quick, and how you said it was funny how you went thinking about buying a home, and then you got into digital assets, which is so funny because not many people I know specifically that I spoke to did that transition. Kind of were looking into a home and then got into digital assets. It's kind of, you're literally kind of the poster child of like the revolution I like seeing, because so I hear all the time, right? And obviously, you talk to people and they haven't seen you in a while. They don't really know what you're up to. And, they're just trying to be nice. So I hear all the time, well, the first thing you should do is buy a home, right? You want to buy a home. And that way you're not wasting your money on rent. And, just so, I'm not trying to have a whole TED talk every time I haven't seen somebody in a while and they want to give some financial or whatever advice. I say, yeah, it's a great idea. I'll linking into it. The problem with that is, maybe 50 years ago, buying a home was probably a good idea. I mean, it was a lot cheaper back then. You're actually going to own the asset, which is the home. Yeah, why not buy a home? It's a good idea. But nowadays...
And also, your income to mortgage ratio was way better than it is now.
Exactly.
I mean, back then, you can pay off your mortgage well before 30 years. Now, I don't know if you know, but Biden even suggested pushing 40-year mortgages just so people can have a better chance of paying off their house.
Yeah, exactly. So fundamentally, it makes sense. Surface level, it makes sense. Everyone wants to buy a home, but this is what they don't take into consideration, is going back to personal finance. And this is why everything is different. And that's why you shouldn't just go out saying, well, you should buy a home. And here's the main, kind of just to sum it up really quick in layman terms. Everything comes down to opportunity cost. And your example of how you went from, I want to buy a home, you were thinking very conservative, and it's probably a good idea. But when you saw the opportunity when it came to these digital assets, this new emerging market or industry, I mean, why wouldn't you allocate some capital into that, be a little bit more patient, play the long-term game, and when it comes to buying the home, you will feel like it's a good opportunity. And that's what I think that's why your story is it's so funny, because that's exactly what I would kind of advocate for. Because if you're not ready to buy a home, you should not buy a home. It shouldn't be like, oh, well, I heard buying a home is the best thing ever, I should do it, even though I can't really afford it. Well, no. Take it slower than that. When it comes to buying a home, you will feel it would be financially a good investment. It's not automatically just a good investment because you're going to own where you're living, and now you're not wasting money on rent. That's not what makes it a good investment.
Yeah. So I'll give you a little bit of backstory. So I'll tell you what my 22, 23-year-old self was thinking back then. So back then, my goal was, okay, I'm going to work hard, save up some money. I'm going to buy a duplex or a triplex. I'm going to live in a unit with my wife for a bit while the property's paying off by itself with the tenants. Then I'll just compound it and buy some more houses in 10 to 20, 30 years. And then by the time I retire, I'll have 10 homes that are paying for themselves, and I have a nice retirement, right? That was my goal at 23. Unfortunately, at the time, home prices were just not at the prices that I thought were a good buy. I had a good down payment saved up. I was ready to go. I even met with some loan officers to get it started. But I just wasn't happy. I was doing the math, and it's just like, man, it's going to take me forever to get my first deal, yada, yada, yada. And at the same time, I started getting interested into digital assets, right? I started looking into Bitcoin, to Ethereum, to XRP, into all these top 10 coins back in 2018. And I saw the potential. I saw the run that had just happened 2017, 2018. I saw the history. I saw that. No, it's funny because I was working in real estate at the time, and I saw the value in crypto, and I would ask all these real estate investors that I knew had tons of cash, hey, what do you think about digital assets? And most of them had no idea what they were. And in my head, I was like, oh, there's a ton of value here that's not even unlocked yet. People don't even know about this yet.
You were kind of like that meme. You were kind of like that meme where he's holding the girl's hand and like he's like looking back.
Yeah. Just like that, right? Just like that. And in my head, I was like, oh, snap. Like, people don't know about this yet. This is going to blow up. This is before NFTs. This is before Coinbase was IPO. This is before all the big crypto stuff was on news. Like, crypto was a bad word back then. It literally was a bad word on CNN or CNBC.
CNBC.
On CNBC. There we go. So I decided, I did the math, and I said, oh, even if crypto does 100%, that's nothing in crypto. If you've been in crypto for a while, it does 100% return. It'll be better than me holding on to a real estate deal for 5-10 years. So I said, okay, well, I have to allocate some capital into this. So out of my check that I was saving away every month for my house, I started allocating some of that savings that would have just been stored away doing nothing into assets. And right away I got addicted because as soon as I put some of that money down, I started seeing that money move, and the money started moving up and up and up. And, in a matter of months, I was up 10, 20%. And I was like, oh my God, this is way better than just storing the money under my mattress.
Go
ahead.
Number one, everything you just said, it's opportunity cost. You saw the opportunity. You didn't feel like obviously letting it go, right? The second thing is minimum viable. So for a lot less work, you made a lot more returns. And that's kind of the beauty of kind of being maybe ahead of the curve, maybe doing some homework and really choosing what investments to go into personally. And I feel like everything you just said is kind of literally the exact story of how that can unfold and unravel. So
yeah, correct. And if I wouldn't have done that, I would have probably bought a house. And to be quite honest with you, I would have probably been upside down on a house right now on a mortgage payment, and I would have been in a pretty bad financial decision. So I'm glad it turned out the way it did.
Yeah, you probably would have got one of those ninja loans or something, right?
Oh boy. Now I don't think ninja loans were being dished out back then, but it would have definitely been not great.
Yeah. So I don't know. I just wanted to have a quick. We'll be wrapping up here shortly, but I just wanted to have a quick my 2 cents on just when it comes down to just personal finance, and maybe we do something like this every once in a while where we just give our 2 cents on kind of what we're thinking. But I just wanted to bring up the whole, buying and renting is a waste of money. It's just not the truest thing. And I mean, it's easy to think, I'm going to own my own house and my money is being built equity and stuff like that. But we live in a different time right now, and renting in itself is not a waste of money because look what you're paying for. For example, when you get into an Uber and you get the service, right? After you pay the Uber, you're not like, well, let me have the car. How come I don't have the car? I wanted the car. It's not like that. You're paying Uber, the Uberer, right, for the service of taking you somewhere, not the asset, which is the vehicle, right? Same way with renting. You're paying them for the service of allowing a roof over your head. You don't want to own it. You don't need to own it. Eventually, when that becomes more of a viable situation where you actually can afford a home, right? We're talking about 20% down. We're talking about weekly mortgage payments. That way you can cut down the mortgage time in half. And then obviously 20% so you're not paying PMI. Now we're talking about, okay, I think I can purchase a home and I can actually make it mine a lot quicker, because there's no point of purchasing a 40-year mortgage and the first 10 years of that, 15 years of that is all into interest payments in the first place.
Pure interest.
Be careful. And now I feel like we're becoming like a millennial podcast off of this one, but just be wary about, taking financial advice from just anybody, and don't even listen to us. Do your own homework and figure it out on your own. And that's kind of how I would kind of end this TED Talk for today.
Yeah. If I have any suggestion for anybody starting out right now and they're trying to, getting their bearings financially, it's if you don't have any digital assets, and this is not financial advice, but it kind of is. If you don't have any digital assets, any crypto, I highly recommend getting yourself a small amount. Nothing that's going to tip the boat over, just a small amount that you can hedge against. Especially now, prices are pretty cheap. I mean, are we going to go down from now? Maybe. But if you're willing to buy something and hold on to it for the next 3 to 5 years, chances are you're probably going to do okay, especially if you diversify in top 10, top 20. And if you don't do that, you're possibly going to miss out on a huge opportunity, a generational lifetime opportunity that our generation has been given. And if you miss out, you're going to hate yourself 20, 30 years down the line. So that's just my 2 cents. I really think digital assets are a huge tool for people in our generation to use. And frankly, I think everybody's going to be using them in the next 20 years. And you're going to be hitting yourself in the head if you don't buy in now.
Yeah, that's a great point. You just got to do your due diligence, do your homework, and never invest anything that it's going to, make you have to not eat the next day, right? So, yeah, I thought that was a great little, just 2 cents for the day. And with that being said, I think this was a great episode, Jaime.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I loved it. I want to do a little bit something like this every once in a while. We just talk about finance, talk about what we believe in terms of what's going on in terms of our personal finance, what people who are starting out should be doing, or, it's not financial advice, but what we would do at their age and kind of what's going on in the macro. So, yeah, I really love this podcast. It was a pretty cool episode.
All righty, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you on next week's episode. This has been New Front Radio. Take care.
Later.